So I'm Renee and my pronouns are she, they, and currently I am in the design lab for this year's Paprika Festival. I'm also in Toronto right now.
Very cool. My
Mhm.
name is Rosamund Small, and I'm a playwright and a TV writer, and I work for Outside the March, an immersive theater company. And I'm in Toronto in my apartment near Trinity Bellwoods on a very warm, beautiful holiday Monday. And I was in the Paprika playwriting program, different iterations of it for 4 years. And then I was on staff for my fourth year and then an additional, I think, 3 years. So I think I did 7 or 8 years of Paprika. So it was a big part of my life for a long time.
Wow. Yeah, I think you just answered the first two questions I was gonna ask.
I thought I was supposed to. No, I cheated.
I was gonna ask when were you part of it and like which program, but now that you already answered it, how was your 7 to 8 year experience part of Paprika? How did you feel? Like, what was your overall role in it?
Well, it was so many different things along the way, but I think it was from I think about 19 to 25, or I'm so bad with timelines and things, maybe 18 to 25, something like that, that it was in my life in some way. And it was so many first experiences for me. First time working with a certain kind of collaborator, first time being introduced to a dramaturg, first time first time learning how to write a professional email. Not that I'm an incredible professional emailer, but the first time learning how to reach out to people you don't know and ask them for favors and that kind of sort of theater 101, how to be an artist in the city. A lot of just kind of experiences of being trusted with those kinds of tasks for the very first time, and just a lot of friends. I mean, a huge number of friends and a huge number of collaborators. That was really, really, when I think of it, I think of the people and the people I met who I still keep in touch with, so many, and love them and work with them. So it's a really, really, really pivotal network, in the best sense of networking experience, like networks and networks of interesting people doing interesting things. Yeah.
What would you say would be your favorite memory from your time at Paprika since you spent such a long time of your like just emerging artist? What would you say the most favorite memory for you?
Oh, a lot. I remember, I mean, my favorite memory is after one of the playwriting meetings in, I think, my second year. Most of the other playwrights sort of left, they went home, and me and one other writer, we stayed and kept chatting after the meeting, and we ended up talking. We just ended up talking and talking. We talked for hours and hours and hours. And her name's Britta, and she's still writing. She's writing musicals very, very creatively and successfully and incredibly. And but that was the first time we'd ever really met. That was the first time we connected, and we were really just kind of thrown together in this creative environment. And that's one of my best memories of my life, let alone from the festival, is just like you do just meet people with like-minded goals and get to kind of figure them out. And yeah, just charting some relationships that began in that context, some friendships that were so pivotal and fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, I just love it when you make connections with people who are young and also just like fresh grad or just starting out. I think that's a really good thing that would come out of being a part of Paprika. So what would you say was the biggest lesson that you have learned at Paprika?
Oh, I'm going to repeat myself. So this is going to be one repetition over and over again, but to value the people you work with. Like, I think that's what you learn is to value them deeply and respect them and make their time sort of as joyous as possible and as fulfilling as possible. So when I was a participant, and then my first year on staff, the artistic producer was Rob Kempson, and he's this wonderful facilitator and teacher and artist, and he really just knows how to make something feel really important, even if it's very small. So he was so good at making a small, an audience of 10 people feel like, oh, you're really here to see something. You're here to see something really important because these young people worked really hard on it and it has a lot of value. And he really made a staff meeting feel, this is really important work we're doing, and he made it fun and challenging. And so that, I think, from him and from other people as well, just kind of learning that the experience of it is important, and the relationships that you build within it are important, not just what it looks like on the outside. And that can be hard to know when you're making stuff, when you're starting.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the environment that you like work at Paprika that will bring you into another opportunity because of the relationships and connections that you made when you were young. And it just brings you that you don't even know, that brings the opportunity to you. What would you give as an advice to the current Paprika participants and future participants? What would you like if you just can give them a one piece of advice?
Oh, I mean, it's so hard because I think every time I meet a group of young people, they have a lot of sense of what they want to do and why they want to do it. I really am constantly amazed by that. So I wouldn't ever, most of my advice, I feel like most young artists, by the time they're doing something like that, they already know to try hard, and they already know a lot of those kinds of silly things, but they are really pivotal things. So, you could say anything. You could say, put a lot into it and you'll get a lot out of it. But they already know that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess um, just to really value the time and just try to learn. I think that's sort of really it, and not to worry about impressing anyone, and just to really, really, really try to learn if you can. I think that's the best use of that time. Yeah.
Yeah, just use your time and learn as much as you can while you have the opportunity to learn with professionals who has been through what you're going through right now. So talking about advice, what do you think is the worst piece of advice someone has given you? In terms of like anything artistic or life lessons?
Um, I mean, I don't know if it's so much advice, but the worst thing I've seen modeled is, toughness. Toughness. You got to be tough. Can you handle it? Are you tough enough? Um, yeah, pushing your boundaries to a place you're not comfortable with. I feel like that's not. I think it's out of fashion now. We're having a lot of conversations about that, but I think that's something that, um, you know, I think people push their boundaries the most when they're free to not, if that makes sense, in a rehearsal. So around doing work around trauma, or doing work around just anything really, really hard, emotionally hard, or physically hard. I think I know I push myself more when it's a choice how much I push myself. So I would say that the worst advice I've ever seen is the leadership that wouldn't understand that,
Hmm.
in educational settings.
Yeah.
So certainly that's something I really try to play against. And with, I've had the opportunity to teach now, teach some college students and some professionals. And always I say, would you like to be challenged further? And it's so amazing how much people light up and they go, yes, I would, yes, I would. But knowing that it's really a decision, how far you want to go with something, um, that's something I value, and something that has not always been modeled to me, but it was modeled to me pretty well at Paprika, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, especially coming from theater school, is like the thing that you hear the most is like this is how the industry is going to be like, and you have to face it. You just have to deal with it. But like you said, like teaching in an institution, that is not really the way to go anymore. And it's just more about freedom and more about like how would you push yourself instead of just having to compile, I mean, have to be like just fit into the model of the industry that the teachers would tell you at the theater school.
Yeah, I do think it took me a long time to realize that nobody knows. I mean,
Mhm.
what's the industry, right? What is that? What does that mean? What groups and companies and decision makers are you talking about? So no one really has those answers, and if they pretend they have those answers, they're lying, right? The
Mhm.
industry or the community is changing so fast and so constantly in such unexpected ways that anybody who pretends they have the answers, I think they're either in the past or they're in denial, or both.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of talking like about the future and the industry, what would you want to see in more in the future for theater? Like what would you wish to see more, just more in theater?
Um, Fun. I want to see more fun. I want to see just as many political questions, but I want to see them really just joyous and cutting, maybe satirical, maybe maybe comedic. Just
Mhm.
really, I feel like I want to see um, just wonderful politics, but not necessarily only the pain of politics. I want to see the kind of um, thrill and anger and joy of that on stage as well. I think that is something that we could do better at.
Yeah, I agree. So in terms of your own work, what would you say the things that inspire you to create?
I mean, it's been a hard year for inspiration, honestly. This has been a very hard year. I've been working a lot on other people's projects and shows, TV shows, and some theater pieces that have existed online and that kind of thing. But it's been a really hard year for inspiration. So I can only conclude that other people must be a big source of inspiration because I haven't been able to see as many other people. Um, so it's really been lacking. But I think I find interesting lives really inspiring, and I've not been able to collide with as many interesting lives as usual. It's really just been me and the people I live with, and I know a lot of people have gone through that, and it's
Yeah.
a bit stunting, to be honest.
Yeah. Because I know that you have written like for immersive theater, you work with verbatim theater and also written for musical and also dance theater. There's so many different genre in theater. So what would you say which one you enjoy the most and why? Because you have written for like so many different shows and productions and work with so many people from different like backgrounds.
I just want to collaborate with people I like and respect, and who like and frankly like and respect me. Um, so yeah, it's funny to hear that, and it is true. I think a lot of people do a lot of things, but I'm working on a sketch comedy TV show right now, and a year ago I was working on a very tragic and dramatic ballet with text. I really am. I have so fortunate to have done some very kind of pendulum swings, but I think that there's a humor and a rigor to all of my collaborators that they all have in common, and they all tend to get along with each other. It sort of is a vibe that I seek out of people who just want to be really honest and get really lost and laugh a lot and also take it really seriously and are not afraid to be sad. So I
Mm.
always just pin it to the people. That's why I often either co-write or work with a director very closely or something like that. I really value those relationships.
Mhm. I think as I'm also like I would say I'm trying to be in the playwright because I've written some things like but it's mostly for school and I just want to keep developing on it. But also feel like because you've done both theater and also doing TV, I would like to know like your background into going into being a story editor. That is such a cool position, I feel like if we could talk a little bit about like how did you get involved for writing for TV and like what does a story editor do or like how did you get into the writer's room?
Sure. And it's really, I want to hear about your desire to be a playwright because that really interests me. TV is usually the same story for most people. You're interested in it, you tell people you're interested in it, someone who works in it happens to meet you, and then you have, you in it, and uh, and then you end up with a job, and that's your first job, and that's the hardest one to get. So that's really all there is to it. So yeah, there's not a lot of really open application things, but I mean there are some, but that wasn't a part of my process. But yeah, just like anything, you just try to sort of sniff out how you can kind of learn more about that world and see if you could get into it a tiny bit and then sort of see what happens. Uh, yeah, and I find that I know it's a hard answer because it doesn't give you a lot of instructions as to what to do, but also it does because it just means just tell everyone if you want to write for TV. So if you, Renee, wants to write for TV, now I know. And next time someone says, do you know anyone? I can say, well, I know Renee. And that's a start, because that's how people get hired. So tell me about, you're interested in writing. Like, why don't you tell me about yourself?
So basically what you just said is like more what we just talked about, like the making connections and all that. So basically if I want to write for TV, if I know someone, then I can ask like, what was your experience for it and stuff like that, right? Like it's all about the connections, would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, I hesitate to say that because it's sort of random and it's not particularly equitable. But yeah, I mean, I always get a bit hesitant around words like industry or business because I don't really understand how any of these things work. I'm just kind of a creative person and I sort of ended up with some jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, but I think authentic relationships and connections as much as possible, really having in common with someone a way of working, and then working with them is not just a connection for a gig. It's, well, we have a way of working together. So now we can work in this context together, in this context together. So really just trying to build as much trust into your relationships as possible. And I sort of try to approach it like that, because when I think of sort of making connections, I get very anxious and I feel like, oh, I can't be myself, or, I have to impress everyone. That's horrible.
Yeah. Because for me, I think I am mostly trained as an actor, and now I'm in Paprika for design, and I'm also writing because I have all these things that I want to do, and I have a story I want to tell. That's why I want to keep writing, like be a writer. But sometimes I find it really hard to just balance all these ideas that I want to do. I even want to do producing too. So it's like, wow, there's a lot of different paths that I really want to try. And just the idea of like getting my story out there, I feel like is really important to me. That's why I'm like, I just want to just keep creating and keep writing. So it's just great to hear from someone like you who has been through the process of like trying to be a writer and then working with people and making connections and stuff like that.
And I think it's amazing all the things you do. I think I definitely try not to think about things in terms of regret, but if I had a professional regret, it would probably be, one or two mistakes, very specific mistakes, but really broad strokes, it would be, I think I was afraid to try other things. I was afraid to direct because I thought that I was very bossy and I thought that it would lead to me being a bit of a tyrant. So I thought, well, I shouldn't do that, bad for my personality. And I thought I wasn't a very good actor and I shouldn't do that, and I couldn't do accents and I can't sing and all this stuff, and I wish I'd done more of that, not because I'm incredible at it, but just I wish I'd done more acting classes. I'm talking like I'm dead. I mean, I'm perfectly able to do that in the next 10 years or 20 years of my life, but the pandemic has given me a sense of sort of what did you really do with your theater career? Now it's on pause, and I wish I'd not even pursued them professionally, but just done them, like done the class or tried it, like just tried doing it more. So I think it's great you're doing all these things, even if you don't become a professional, all of the things, to have tried designing a show, even if you're like, that sucks, I'm never doing that again, is so cool. And I wish I'd done more of that. And I'm also guessing you're probably a pretty talented designer, so maybe you'll do it forever.
Oh, I'm still learning, but you're still young too. Like you can, I think like during the pandemic, we all feel like we're just like everything has paused and nothing is like progressing. Like what have I been doing for the past how many years you've been trying to be in the industry? So it's just really hard, I think, too, like for a lot of artists to just trying to keep going and creating even during this observed pandemic situation. Also, so in terms of your regret and everything, would you say that would be what is the biggest challenges that you have faced in your career? Either they are caused by yourself, like your own regret that you didn't go and do it, like you limit yourself, or someone else that has caused that challenge, or just the environment in general.
I mean, there's a lot of challenges. I think there's a lot of challenges to being an artist. There's external challenges. There's, I certainly don't I feel like a very privileged person, but certainly I have encountered a lot of misogyny in different forms. And that, a very light version of what a lot of people experience it, but there will be challenges like that, and they come along sometimes when you don't expect it, and that can be very discouraging. But I also think there's a lot of spaces where that hasn't been my experience at all. In fact, most of them. So there's a lot to navigate, and a lot of people have a lot more challenge like that. So that's always on the list of challenges. I'm sorry, this might be a bit of a sad answer. I didn't mean to break it down, but truthfully, the big challenges are hard, and they're things like workplace bullying, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then there's also just believing in yourself is very challenging, especially because I really don't want to be an arrogant person. And I think that's hard too, is trying to, I really, really don't want to be an arrogant artist, and I don't want to be a jerk, and sort of trying to say like, okay, you can do this, you should be here, but without saying, you're so amazing, you should be here, because I don't want to believe that, because I actually think everyone's really creative and most of us could do most stuff. Maybe. Oh, I'm flubbing this answer. You'll have to cut it.
No, it's good. I think also too is because like you always doubting yourself. Like, am I being too bossy? Like, am I being too pushy? Like sometimes I also think sometimes I want to put up like my ideas out to the group, but then maybe I should not, because what would they think? That would be a stupid question to bring it up. So like you said, like confidence, or just like be yourself, and just the dedication of to not like doubt yourself too much, and just believe it, like just believe in your words that will make a change.
Yeah. Tell me when you figure it out, you know what I mean? Like really, it's really difficult. And I think it's connected to the other big challenge I have, which is I get very jealous sometimes. And that's very hard, because I don't want to be, I want to benefit from other people's creativity and other people's joy. But I get jealous of not even like awards or something, but just like if someone's had a rehearsal process that was so challenging and excellent and interesting, I'm just like, oh, I want to have that. Like, I want to be in that room. I want to be in that show. I want to do that cool thing. So that's really hard, is being like, no, it's good that they got to do the cool thing. You got to go see the cool thing. Like, like just trying to be happy for other people when they get to do all the cool stuff. That's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Definitely, because it was like when there's people who are actually working on cool projects, then you're like, oh my god, I want to be a part of it, but I'm not. So you start to like talk to yourself, is like, am I not doing what I should be doing to get into that space? But maybe we should change our mind, be like, maybe we should be happy for them that they got that position, and just keep on working on our own craft, and instead of just looking out and like comparing yourself to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get like irrationally too. I don't know about you. I get like jealous of, I watch a video of, I guess it's the pandemic, but I watch a video of people in New York doing like circus arts.
Oh my God,
I'm like, whoa, I wish I was in that show. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I have never taken a circus class. Like, but it just, I get swept up in envying other people's interesting artistic processes and wishing I was doing it,
So I was watching people dance. I was like, I wish I could be a dancer and just join a dancing company, a dance company. But I'm like, oh, I'm just sitting here in front of my computer. So what would you say one thing that made you who you are, like an experience that changed you?
I mean, the cop-out answer, which is every process changes you. Every single process changes you. And it changes you in ways you don't even realize for so long. But the really, really bad processes change you. Really good ones change you. I don't know. That's life, right? That they really, yeah. I don't think many processes I can look back on and think, oh, that came and went. Oh well, they're always very intense experiences, and they sometimes they teach you lessons. And I think one thing I've learned is you can sometimes learn a lesson too hard. Like don't be rude to your colleagues can be a lesson that's so ingrained in you that you're afraid to say when something bothers you. You know what I mean? Like it's a tough thing of always trying to navigate how to go through a process, because you're working with other people, and other people are really complicated and they're really different. So
Yeah. Because I feel like even the bad experiences or something that you think might not be beneficial, it turns out to be a lesson. Because for me too, like when I was really young and then in school and trying to direct a show when I have no experience in directing, and it didn't turn out to be fantastic. Like the show was itself, it wasn't good. So I was really upset about it. But now I'm thinking about it like, yeah, the stuff I learned to not ever do again, like in the future. So like that is a lesson too, even though it might not be a really good experience in the moment. But yeah.
I want to ask you about that show more, but I guess maybe I should let you move on from what might have been a really
Yeah.
I kind of love hearing about people's, when people say, oh, it was such a bad experience, I'm like, what happened? Like,
Bad experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't
Also
cry,
being
I
like,
won't cry.
yeah, I mean we can like talk about it later on, but like it was an experience of like, because everyone is kind of like inexperienced and everyone is a student and everyone is like studying and stuff like that, and it just, I don't know what went wrong, but it wasn't good.
I'm sorry. Here, I really won't make you stick in this topic, but I do think there is nothing, honestly, there's nothing funnier than describing theater that's gone wrong. Rehearsal, show, it doesn't matter. Like nobody wants to hear about your show that went super well 10 years later. They're like, oh, that must have been nice for you. But if you have a show that went down the toilet in whatever way, that's going to be dinner parties for a lifetime. So I love that. I feel like that's great.
Yeah, it'd be funny, like the question that people would ask you, like, what's the worst experience you have encountered doing theater? And then you can like say that as a party question and be like, oh, I've done this, and this, and it went terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of questions, but like, is there a question that you hate being asked? Because we talked about like questions that'd be funny to say, but like, what is the question that you just hate it? Like, don't ask me that question.
I think just how, when people want to know how do I be successful? Or how, when you're just starting, and I know this is really hard for some people to hear, but when you're just starting, you're not ready to be successful in the way that mostly people are talking about. You're not probably ready for things that can be hard, like having an agent or having a lot of critics come to your show. There are milestones that you don't actually want them right away. And not because people are going to be mad at you or they're not going to like your show, but because you need to mature into those opportunities and into the challenges and the difficulties of having an external light shined on you as a creator. And I think so I find it hard, because who am I to tell someone that they shouldn't try to get an agent? But questions like that, I'm like, that's you have to do the craft first, and you have to find the sense of self, I think. And there's no age where that's set, but you just need to get that experience and that kind of passion and rigor down first, I think. So stuff like that can be hard because I don't know people, so I don't know if they're ready for those things. But often I think, oh, it's not quite time, And not that I'm ready in a lot of ways, but I just think that the focus on external quote unquote success can be hammered into you by a very capitalist society. And if you want those things, that's fine and that's great, and you should go after them, but they're not the first step, I think, is important.
Yeah, because I feel like the word success is so different. Because I always think about like, oh, I'm getting older, like I'm like in my late 20s, like I haven't done things that I wanted to do, and I just like, oh, I wish I'm successful. But that goes back to like comparing yourself, because maybe it's not time for you. You're not ready for it. Even if even the opportunity was given to you, you're not ready for it. Like you're just not ready to take up that opportunity, even if you really wanted it. So it's like, the question of like, what is success? Like, how would you like be, how do I be you? Like, because you, when you look at someone who has done so much in their life, but you don't know what kind of effort and time and like dedication they have put into their work and like connections they have made, but you're just thinking about the end result of like, oh, I want to be Rosamund's mom. So how do I become you?
I can't tell you how much I don't feel that way about myself. I can't even tell you how much I don't feel that I am some, I can't even tell you. I can't even explain to you right now
Yeah.
how much, I mean, it's so delightful and it's so sweet and it's making me really like you and think this is just a lovely conversation, but I can't even express to you how much that doesn't, I do not feel that way. I don't feel successful. I don't feel, I don't feel any of those things. And also any indicator I might have on my resume of those things is not a source of self-esteem for me at all. It can be a wonderful thing, it can be a delightful thing, it can be a fortunate thing, but it actually makes you feel wild sometimes, you know, a little bit wild, like someone's going to find out that you shouldn't be there. Yeah. And I also, I don't know, it's so sort of charming and really, really, really relatable what you're saying about I'm getting older, I'm getting older. But you know, I had my dad is 70 and he turned to me the other day and he said, can you believe I overheard someone saying they didn't want to turn 55? 55, you can do anything when you're 55. And he's absolutely right. And 55 is also a perfectly good age to do anything, as is 70, as is, you know, I'm no, I'm really, really conscious people older than me are going to be watching this and really mad at me because when you talk about age and old people don't like that, which I totally get. But you just must banish it because you must, you know, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah, I just find it really weird, like the age thing. Like when you're at a certain age, you look at someone who might be a little bit older, you're like, oh my God, like I'm in my 20s. How do I be someone who's in their 30s? But then you look at them who are like just in the teenage years, you're like, oh, I wish I'm younger. Like it's always like the cycle of like you always envy the person who's younger, and you're just like, oh my God, but the people who are older than me, that how do I become like that? Or like what else should I do to be more like the person who is much older than you, who is more experienced than you? I just found it really interesting and like just yeah.
It's I guess we're probably not supposed to swear, which I really understand, but it's a mind thing, you know? And
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I think it's just, we get a lot of weird messages about what we should look like and what we should do and what we should have. And that's a lot of noise. It's just a lot of noise, I think. But it's hard. Like it's noise that you can hear and that I can hear. But it's noise. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also said, I know you just said that like you don't see yourself as like someone who's successful or someone who's like someone's role model, but I have known people who are emerging. They were talking about like, oh, have you seen Rosamund Small's work? Like, have you seen her stuff? Or I just want to write like her. Like I've seen stuff like that. Because I was in in your Tomorrow Love because I was a Humber and we were just like doing that. We put it on stage and we were just thinking like, oh, the writing is so good, it's so like unique, it's so special. Everyone was talking about like, how do we write like someone who are like experienced like you? So I guess like you are someone's role model, even though you might not think so, but you are.
Well, that's very, very nice. I don't really know what else to say, but that's very, very nice to hear. And I thank you. And it is you know, writing for the theater can feel quite lonely and your work comes and then it goes away. And it is honestly, it is actually so meaningful to hear that. So thank you.
So in terms of like talking about role models, do you have a role model like growing up or someone that would inspire your work that you always look up to?
I have tons and tons. And I think about that term sort of mentor or role model a lot because basically the mentors I value became friends, became the relationship goes from sort of this to this gradually and slowly and in a really interesting way. Yeah, I have a ton and they've all followed that pattern of you were sort of afraid of them and then you sort of learn from them. And then over time, you recognize their insecurities and their shortcomings, which is sort of a strange experience, and also the things that are great about them that you didn't even realize. And that's so cool. So yeah, that's why I think it's vulnerable to be a mentor, because eventually your mentee is going to notice that you're just a person, just as, if we got to know each other better, or your friends who are in Tomorrow Love were to get to know me, they would start to realize I'm just another person, and I'm going to let you down if you put me on a pedestal, right? So mentorship is really complicated. And probably because I've described it like that, I won't say my mentors, but they're really great people. Their value is in how real they've been with me over the years, and how vulnerable, and how I've started to recognize them as just another person wandering around trying to find meaning in their lives, just like me. So
yeah, I think it's just going back to like seeing someone and looking at someone's work, and you just assume that they're like so much better than you because they've been in the industry, they know people, so you just look up to them. But once you like get to know them, the mentor is just another person, and it's just they are still figuring things out. Like maybe they're also struggling like you. But yeah.
And just, theater's a trick, right? It's a show. Like, so when you're getting to know someone through their work, it's a show. Like, that's not them, right? And there's a really, really, really great article by George Saunders, who's an amazing writer of mostly short stories. And he talks about how when you're writing, you rewrite to make yourself sound more perceptive and more self-deprecating and more this and that. And it's made me feel so much better, because I was like, oh my God, he's so funny, he's so self-deprecating, he's so perceptive. And I was like, right, he works hard at that. Like,
Yeah.
it's that's his talent, that's his skill, is making you feel that way about his narrative voice. And so that's really cool about. So if you're talking about mentors that you meet through their work, and certainly if someone was to meet me through my work, some of it you might not like, but if you do like it, just know like it's a trick. Like I edited it to make you feel that way, to make you feel like it was fast paced and fun. Anything that it might be good about it is, it's a magic trick.
Yeah. I guess now is like time for some fun question. Hope you're having a great weekend and great day, but what would your perfect day look like? If you just like, I've got to imagine and like just this perfect day, what would it be?
It's the pandemic talking, because I've had a lot of really nice days in my home with people I love, and distanced visits and that kind of thing. Honestly, my current fantasy world that I escape to is I just go back to a trip I took alone, and I went to London, to the UK, and I used to go to all the museums, which were free, and just walk through them. And I was in kind of a depressed time in my life, and I think that the art I saw kind of cured me. Like I went to see theater, and I went to the museums, and I just was alone, and I'd have a book. And so I was so privileged. Oh my gosh, everyone listening to this is like, yeah, you took a vacation where you didn't have to do anything. Yeah, that sounds great. It was. But to just wander through a new space in a country where you're not in the business, and you don't know anyone, you don't have friends, you don't have context, and you don't have to put yourself first. You don't have to center your own thoughts about yourself, and to just take in all of the art, whether it was from hundreds of years ago or like an actor in a fringe show down the street, like just doing those kinds of days filled me with so much gratitude that so many people are making things and writing things and painting things and preserving those paintings and producing those theaters and raising that money. And I just thought, oh my gosh, there's such a big world of people making things, and I just get to kind of take it in. It was so healing. And I think we all need to heal from the pandemic a little bit, even if we've had a good pandemic. And so that's what I'm hoping I get to do. Something like that, even if it's more local. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I understand completely, because I love doing things solo. It just gets you like to think about things, because like sometimes like go see shows and see theater, go into a museum. I just love being alone. Like it's just the solo walk like just around the environment, just give you time to just observe and just not talk to people and not having to like come up with a conversation with your friends. It's not like having not friends is not a good thing, but like I always go see shows like alone and I keep like, so that I have like all these questions, I can write it down and like put it in my journal, and just it's just a really good and relaxing thing to do alone. What would you say a piece of media that you can talk about for hours? So like it doesn't have to be theater, it's like something else, like something media wise, you can just like keep talking about it.
I can talk about Big Little Lies. I find season 1 of Big Little Lies really compelling, and I've thought about the structure of it a lot and why it's funny. I can talk about a lot of romantic comedies that I've watched a lot of times. I also really like mysteries. So the genre of Gone Girl, but sort of not just Gone. In fact, that's not my favorite one, but sort of a similar genre, the sort of not police procedural, but sort of generally it's like woman finds herself in some kind, a cruise ship, and there's a missing body or whatever, like stuff like that. So I can talk about that genre forever. So I'm naming all the things that I think are sort of I don't feel guilty about them at all, but they're sort of considered guilty pleasures. And maybe that's why I like to talk about them, because I think I'm kind of I'm almost a snob about being an anti-snob, if that makes sense. I'm sort of proud of my lowbrow taste. But I also actually really like Chekhov and stuff. So it's,
I love mystery. It's like it gets you to think, and it's cool. What's a trend that you can get behind?
Oh, I'm gonna say something that's gonna get me in trouble or something. Oh no. Pass. I'm too worried I'm gonna say something really rude about something people really like.
Okay.
But there's so many.
Tell me later.
I will.
Privately.
I'm too afraid. I'm too much of a coward. I try not to publicly say negative things very often, because I don't want to regret it. But yeah, loads, tons, most times, everything.
Yep, I get you. So the last question, well, it's not a question, but if you can finish the sentence, the future of theater is
multifaceted. Is that okay? I don't even really know what multifaceted means, but I think it means like a lot of different stuff. So I guess I passed on that too, sort of.
Perfect. Amazing.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.